Even if you own 37 acres of land, the government will still control your land. Did y'all know that? Because I didn't know that. And I just walked into the municipal building. Okay, I'm going to put a tiny home on my property. And he immediately said, nope, you can't do that. I was like, what? What are you talking about? I have 37 acres. There's plenty of room to put a tiny home. Nope, you can't do that. You're zoned to have one house on your property. I'm like, dude, my property is massive, okay? And this is for my kids' future to have a tiny home. Ultimately, I want three little tiny homes in the back corner of our property. Nope, you can't do that. What do you mean you can't do that? No. Zoning is planned for, I'm like, what plans does the government have for my property? I don't understand what you're saying to me. And you could tell this guy had never gotten any pushback because I was pushing back. Like, you're telling me I can't put a tiny home on my property for my children to live in when they're 18, 19, 20, young adults. What are you talking about? No, it's not zoned for that. Okay.
People spend an inordinate amount of time talking about the cost of housing these days, but they rarely want to get down to business and address the root causes of why you can no longer afford a home. And no, it's not because you're living in late stage capitalism. It's not because BlackRock is buying up all of the inventory. It is because your government is making it really hard to simply create more supply. That, and they're rooting the money by spending and printing tons of new dollars every year. In truth, zoning is something that state and local lawmakers can and should be reforming rapidly. Zoning doesn't only do things like prohibit people from building additional housing on their own property, which they could use for their kids or that they could rent out. It also prevents people from being able to do things like build duplexes, build mixed-use housing, transform commercial property into residential property. Some cities and localities get even crazier with this and prevent things like adding on to your basement, creating garage apartments, or building backyard cottages. The West was built on the concept of private property rights, but if you pay attention beyond the slogans, you're going to find out that our government has been chipping away at that concept for decades. Now, in places like Michigan, state lawmakers are starting to get serious and actually looking to introduce reforms that would start to pull back some of these ridiculous restrictions that make housing so expensive. But what you're going to find is that when they do that, you're going to have a lot of people coming out of the woodwork to protest because they care a lot more about what things look like or what's happening next door to them than they do about people being able to afford houses. And trust me when I say that these types will be showing up to state capitals and to committee hearings to try to protest deregulation and zoning reform. That means if you actually care about this issue and you want to be able to afford a home or you want your kids to be able to afford a home, you have to show up and outnumber them. It's really easy to make housing more affordable, but it isn't always politically easy to pass the legislation that would enable that to be the case.